Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive into some really interesting stories we found this week. We've got a pretty diverse selection this week, I think. A bit of politics, some market moves that I think will be interesting to everyone, and of course, a dash of cricket, as always.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix for sure,
Mhm.
especially when you see these uh, seemingly separate stories and how they kind of paint a picture of what's happening in India. It's always a fascinating exercise.
Oh, absolutely. So let's jump right in. In the political arena, we've got some drama unfolding right now. 10 opposition MPs have been suspended. It all went down at a parliamentary committee meeting. Things got a little heated.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intense. And at the center of all this is a proposed amendment to the Waqf Act. Now imagine Waqf as a kind of trust fund. It's dedicated to supporting mosques, schools, charitable works within the Muslim community. It's a pretty big deal.
So these endowments, these Waqf endowments, they often involve property right. I mean, that's got to be a sensitive issue.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They often involve property, and they have centuries of tradition behind them. These things hold significant cultural and economic weight in India.
So this is about more than just legalities then, isn't it? It feels like it's tapping into something deeper.
Exactly. You're talking about religious freedom, property rights,
hmm
and the role of government in managing these really sensitive issues.
It's a real balancing act for sure. And speaking of public perception and government action, the Supreme Court just dismissed a PIL that was trying to label the TDS system as forced labor.
Whoa, now that's a bold claim. It definitely speaks to the ongoing debate about individual rights versus government authority.
Yeah, forced labor might be a bit strong, but I guess it highlights how some people view taxation.
Well, for those unfamiliar, TDS stands for tax deducted at source. It's basically a way for the government to collect income tax directly from your earnings.
Right, so it's taken out before you even see it.
Exactly.
So I guess calling it forced labor is a stretch. But it does raise those questions about individual autonomy and the perceived burdens of taxes.
It does. And it's interesting that the court ultimately upheld TDS. It emphasizes the government's need for efficient revenue collection. It's essential for the state to function properly.
That's a good point. It's always a balancing act, isn't it? The needs of the state versus the rights of the individual. There's another story with political implications that caught my eye. The Delhi High Court just rejected a plea from a group of BJP MLAs. They wanted certain CAG reports tabled in the assembly.
Interesting. So this is all about the upcoming elections in Delhi.
Right, and the timing is interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. You see, CAG reports are like in-depth audits. They're conducted by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. They examine government finances and performance.
So basically, a deep dive into how the government's been spending money.
Exactly. And these reports can be pretty revealing. You can see why the BJP MLAs might want them made public.
Yeah, I can see them wanting to stir the pot a little before the election, hoping to find some ammunition in those reports, maybe.
It's a classic case of political maneuvering.
It is. But the court dismissed their plea.
Yeah, it seems like they want to keep things fair. Prevent the use of sensitive financial information for partisan gains.
It makes sense. The timing is just so suspicious. Releasing those reports right before an election could really influence voters.
Absolutely. It's a sensitive issue for sure.
It's amazing how even something as dry as a financial audit can become a political battleground. But enough with the political maneuvering for now. Let's shift gears and talk about something a bit more exciting: the stock market.
All right. From politics to profits. Always an interesting transition.
It is. So, amidst all this political drama, India's benchmark indices, the Nifty and the Sensex, they're soaring to new heights.
They are. It's a really positive sign. It paints a picture of a resilient economy.
It does. It makes you feel optimistic about India's economic prospects, doesn't it?
It does. But remember, a rising tide doesn't always lift all boats.
True. And that brings us to the interesting case of Reliance Capital seeking delisting from the stock exchange.
Yeah, that's a significant development. Delisting means Reliance Capital's shares won't be traded publicly anymore. It's part of a resolution process after they faced some financial difficulties.
So they're going private, essentially.
Exactly. Stepping out of the constant scrutiny of the public market.
Makes you wonder if this will become a trend, especially with global markets being so unpredictable these days.
It's definitely something to watch. It could signal a shift in India's corporate landscape.
It could. And speaking of unexpected market moves, Tata Technologies just hit a 52-week low. That's quite a contrast to the overall market performance.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head-scratcher at first glance,
Yeah.
but it reflects some investor concerns. There's a global slowdown happening in the manufacturing sector, and that's a sector Tata Technologies relies on heavily.
So even a giant like Tata, involved in everything from cars to aerospace engineering. Even they're feeling the effects of a global slowdown.
Exactly. It shows that despite India's relative strength, it's still deeply connected to the global economic web.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It is. And with all these anxieties about a global recession, investors are understandably cautious.
Makes sense. It's a reminder that even in a booming market, you have to understand the nuances of individual companies and sectors.
Absolutely. A single headline can tell a much deeper story about the forces shaping not just individual businesses, but the entire economic landscape.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how these seemingly small events can have such wide-reaching effects.
It is, and it makes you realize that we're all in this together.
We are.
And, we've been talking about these global connections and everything, and it makes you think about what's happening over on Wall Street. It seems like it's having a bit of a wobble.
Oh, right, yeah. Fed week is coming up, and I guess Wall Street's getting nervous. For those of us who aren't financial experts, could you maybe break down why we should even care about the American Federal Reserve?
Well, think of it this way. Imagine the global economy as this massive network of, waterways, all interconnected. And the Fed being America's central bank, it's like this powerful current that can influence the flow of all those waterways.
Okay, I like that analogy. So the Fed makes a move, and those ripples are felt all the way over in India.
Exactly. Their decisions on interest rates and stuff,
Yeah.
they can impact economies everywhere, including India.
Wow, so they really do have that much power, huh?
They do. But here's the thing. Even with all this uncertainty on Wall Street, the Indian market is holding its own.
It's like it's marching to the beat of its own drum.
It is. And it could be a sign that India is becoming more economically independent.
Like forging its own path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Less susceptible to the whims of global markets.
That's a really interesting thought.
It is. But it's still early days. We'll have to see if this decoupling is a lasting trend or just a temporary thing.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But speaking of resilience, the Indian cricket scene seems to be mirroring that very quality.
Ah, yes.
Brr.
Cricket. The heart and soul of India.
It really is. And right now it's a stage for some pretty incredible displays of individual grit and determination.
It is. We've got these comeback stories and everything.
Yeah, and we were talking about those red ball woes earlier. You know how some of India's top players seem to be struggling in Test cricket?
Right.
It's almost like a tale of two crickets, isn't it?
It is.
You've got the explosive energy of the IPL, and then the more strategic, patient approach needed for Test matches.
It's a fascinating contrast for sure, both in terms of the style of play and the mental fortitude required.
Yeah, Test cricket demands a different kind of engagement.
It does. It's about understanding the nuances of the game, the ebb and flow.
It's about stamina, strategic thinking, and the ability to adapt to conditions over 5 long days. No wonder some players who excel in the shorter formats find it challenging.
Exactly. It's a whole different ballgame.
It is. And for India, a country where cricket is more than just a sport, these red ball woes raise some important questions.
They do.
I mean, Test cricket is a source of national pride.
Absolutely.
Fans want to see their team excel on the world stage. But this struggle in the longer format, it has everyone wondering about the future of Indian cricket.
It's like a puzzle that needs to be solved.
It is.
Can India maintain its dominance in the shorter formats while also nurturing the skills and temperament needed for Test cricket?
Can they bridge that gap?
It's a question that's on everyone's mind.
It is. But, even with these challenges, one thing's for sure, India is never a dull moment.
Never dull a moment.
From political jostling to market swings and the constant thrill of cricket, India is pulsing with energy.
It's a nation that's constantly evolving.
It is. It's like watching history unfold and fast forward.
It is.
But, while we've been talking about all these different aspects of India's journey, there's one headline we haven't really touched upon yet, and I think it's actually quite significant in the context of India's overall economic narrative.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were talking about Tata Technologies hitting a 52-week low earlier, but we didn't really delve into what that dip might mean. It seems like a simple market fluctuation at first glance, but I'm wondering if there's a deeper story there.
Well, you might be onto something. This dip in Tata Technologies stock price, it reflects a much larger trend that's happening in the Indian economy.
What kind of trend?
The push for make in India and the rise of domestic manufacturing and technological innovation.
Right, and Tata Technologies is a major player in that space.
Exactly.
I mean, they're involved in everything from designing cars to aerospace engineering.
They are. So their successes and struggles They can be seen as a microcosm of India's ambitions in this sector.
That's interesting.
It is.
So it's not just about one company's share price, it's about a whole nation's aspirations to become a global leader in these cutting-edge industries.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's why this seemingly minor headline about Tata Technologies, it actually carries a lot of weight.
It speaks to India's determination to carve its own path, to become a global leader.
Even as it navigates this complex global economy?
It's amazing how these seemingly unconnected headlines can reveal these intricate connections, these larger narratives that are shaping India's future.
It's all about connecting the dots, seeing the patterns, and understanding the forces at play.
It's like we're piecing together a giant puzzle, one headline at a time.
Exactly.
And with each piece, our understanding of India becomes clearer, more nuanced.
More real.
It is, and it's fascinating.
It is, and I have no doubt that as we continue this exploration, we'll uncover even more fascinating connections, more surprising insights, and even more reasons to be captivated by this incredible nation.
I think you're right. And you know, all this talk of interconnectedness and resilience has really got me thinking. It's like India is a microcosm of the world itself, grappling with similar challenges, striving for similar goals.
That's a great point. And maybe by studying India's journey, by understanding its unique approach to these global challenges, we can actually learn something about our own societies and economies.
It's like looking in a mirror, but one that reflects a different perspective, a different way of approaching things. Exactly.
It's really interesting.
It is, and that's what makes this deep dive so compelling. It's not just about understanding India for its own sake, but about using that understanding to broaden our own perspectives.
To challenge our own assumptions.
Exactly. And ultimately, to become more informed and engaged citizens of the world.
Well said. But for now, I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about. They've got political intrigue to analyze, market trends to decipher, and cricketing dramas to follow. And, hopefully, they'll be inspired to delve even deeper, explore these topics further, and engage with India's story in a more personal and meaningful way.
On that note, I think it's time for a quick breather. We've covered a lot of ground today, and our brains could probably use a moment to process all these incredible insights.
I agree. A wise decision.
We'll be back shortly to wrap up this deep dive with some final thoughts and maybe a few provocative questions to leave our listeners pondering.
That was good.
Stay tuned, folks. The adventure continues in just a few moments. All right, we are back for the final stretch of our deep dive into India. It's amazing, you know, how all these seemingly random headlines, when you connect them, they really tell a story about where a country is headed.
Yeah, it's true. It's like we're putting together a mosaic, each little piece representing a different part of India's story.
And it's a complex story.
It is, full of twists and turns.
But you know what really strikes me? Is that even amidst all the political clashes and the economic uncertainties, there's this underlying current of resilience.
Yeah, I see that too. It's in the stock market holding strong. Even in those individual stories from the cricket pitch, it's like India just has this ability to adapt, to bounce back from challenges, to always find a way forward.
It makes you wonder, what is it about India that gives it that resilience?
It's a good question. Maybe it's their history, having weathered so many storms over the centuries.
Could be.
Or maybe it's that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive to innovate and find solutions.
Yeah, you see that everywhere.
You do. From the bustling marketplaces to the tech startups.
And hey, let's not forget that passionate love for cricket.
Oh, yeah.
A game that's all about adaptation and strategy.
Exactly.
Even those red ball woes we discussed, that struggle to adapt to Test cricket. It's part of this bigger story of growth and evolution.
It is. It's about finding that balance where India can excel in all formats of the game.
On the world stage.
Exactly.
So if we were to kind of zoom out for a second and look at India from a global perspective, what would be the key takeaway for someone trying to understand India's place in the world?
I think it's this. India is at a crossroads, embodying both the challenges and opportunities of our time.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a nation grappling with internal divisions, striving for economic prosperity, and trying to assert its voice on the global stage.
And through it all, there's that thread of resilience, that determination to forge its own path.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what makes India such a compelling case study, a microcosm of the larger forces shaping our world.
It really is a fascinating country.
It is.
So for you, dear listener, as you absorb all these insights, we'll leave you with a final thought, a question to ponder.
A question to ponder.
Imagine India as this vast and intricate tapestry, woven with threads of history, culture, ambition, and resilience. What stands out to you in this tapestry? What colors, what patterns, what stories capture your imagination?
And how does understanding India's journey, its triumphs and struggles, help you make sense of your own place in the world?
It's a question worth asking.
It is.
We encourage you to keep exploring, to dive deeper into the stories that resonated with you today.
Maybe you'll delve into the history of the Walk Act.
Or track the performance of Tata Technologies?
Or even catch a thrilling IPL match.
Who knows?
Every headline, every data point, every anecdote, it's a window into a larger narrative
A piece of the puzzle.
that helps us understand not just India, but ourselves and the world we live in.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep seeking those aha moments.
Those moments that connect the dots.
And illuminate the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface.
That's what it's all about.
That's the essence of the deep dive. And that's what we hope you'll take with you from today's exploration.
Until next time, happy exploring.
And as always, thanks for joining us on the Dope Dive.